다단하게 알아서 강가 통만 좀 맞대라니 근데 셔도 델레스 고이나 가르라고 오는 거와 셔도 델레스 샤이스.
So today, also to all of those of you who have not met before, although it is nice to see you, so Khensur Rinpoche offers his greetings to all of you. Can you hear Khensur Rinpoche on the loudspeaker?
Yes.
Okay.
근데 다 알아서 강가 사다 엄마 손조슈야 때라 나름 년에나 세다 가보 쉬스 가르레 세션나 다 알아서 미치바이 메드시게 되네 되는 알아서 강가 되는 조지슈야 때라 세다 가보 쉬 저로서 이나요 셀 가보 용고 우저레스.
So then, for all of us gathered here together from Rinpoche's side, he is so very happy to be able to see all of you and to meet all of you. And also, just with this awareness that all of us are human beings, we share this human situation in that we all are seeking to be able to achieve happiness. And we are all gathered together in order to do that. So Rinpoche is very pleased.
대소자 당가로서 강가로 대화 내봐도 등하면 대봐 지출했어. 무슨 수이나 강가로 대화 진대가 등한 대가 말했어. 근데 바이자 다 대화 진대 바이자 대화 지용을 채도록 나로서 단다. 안 수시쇼 라마서 용을 수시마노 저로서 이나요. 수시셔야 돼. 근데 등하도 문제 대화 내봐이자 다 등한 매봐 채도 대화 용을 채도 근데 주셔가 요랬어. 내가 소소소소 하고 그랬어.
So then, generally, as we said, we are the same as all of us are the same as sentient beings, and that we are all seeking that happiness, that meaningful happiness, and that we are also seeking to be able to avoid that suffering. And we also know that all of our kind of happiness and suffering, that this comes from causes and so forth. And so when we get together for a situation like this, from the Lama's side giving the teaching and from the student's side receiving the teaching, we have it with this kind of awareness that this is for this purpose of being able to get rid of suffering and being able to establish happiness.
내가 저저도 담바세 생도 주코네 용토거를 맞으잖아. 그때 용토거 말해서 말해서 하고 그래서 그자라 소바트네 로로소소 자가 소소소소 아 대화체 용어도 내가 매비체도 다시 나도 제거요래도 단다 파트 스치를 대화도 담바도 내가 도저도 다와체 용토거요 말해서 안가로서 대화 통제도 담바도 내가 도저도 다와체 용어도 주야 보지 제거요래서 이 사당 넘어서 끊어져요. 어쩌니 지금도 주셔야로 그대로 가르려서도 너와 용어도 타와도 대화도 내봐지 대화도 대마치 용의 채도 지셔요래서.
So then we are all wishing to get rid of the suffering, and we are wishing to be able to achieve happiness. And so when we look around, we see that different types of people, they are trying many different types of methods to be able to achieve this happiness and to be able to get rid of this suffering. But what happens when we look is we see that they are not successful in that. And then it becomes gradually clear that really the only way to be able to achieve all happiness in a stable way and to be able to get rid of all suffering in a stable way is through the practice of the Dharma, through the practice of the holy teachings. And so when we gather together for this type of event, it's very important to bring forth this type of motivation that we are engaging in the practice of Dharma on one level to achieve separation from suffering and to achieve endowment with perfect happiness.
아셔 나조처럼 투자도서 야지 돈에 멀다 갈레메바 제네를 투자도서 야지 돈에 대체자여래데 가셔를 동안 하보지 용어여래서 그봐 가르를 투자대 야지 야는 도거를 늘 내가 매는거요 늘 내가 매어서 미카제 내가 때문에 칼라 사고요 봐 대송다 대송을 동안 하보지 제 용어여래서 그래서 아코와 제가 그래서 마음으로나 강을 전부지 제약을 다 대학 소나서 용거요레스 가르 저차도서 셔다 저러 야지 전부 땅소나 밀 레가메노 밀 레가메소나 내 밀 레가라테는 칼라사고와레 메바레 노요라바 누가 가보지 용거요레스.
So then, generally, as we stated, there is, apart from the Dharma, no way that we can achieve happiness and that we can completely get rid of that suffering. And when we look around the world, we can see that in kind of striving to be able to find this happiness and get rid of this suffering, human beings in different cultures, in different places, they have employed different methods. And we can say that nominally, actually, what has happened is that outer conditions have improved. Certainly, outer conditions have improved. Lives are more convenient and so forth. And we have people that enjoy kind of very good and stable conditions. But we see that somehow there's kind of there's not an end to their suffering, right? They don't achieve an end to the suffering. And we actually see that people can have a very good basic conditions, have all of their needs met, maybe even kind of not need to work, still have enough to eat and so forth, and yet still they suffer. So that shows us that there's something as a cause for that suffering behind those conditions. And in fact, we can say that despite all we've established with all these improved conditions and modern conveniences, actually the end result comes to the same of suffering, right? Because sometimes people find that they have no work and they have no purpose.
가르쳐가지고 공부는 대대요. 좋아. 이 자들의 내가 저 저러서 쭉 거대 시야라요. 근데 대보요. 그러면 안 돼, 대보요. 내 송사 다다티 가려. 최체 전체 가려도 하고 가. 나로서 최체해야 돼. 그럼 미사가 최체해야 돼. 전체 가려도 돼 하고. 내 가려도 최체해야 돼. 전체 조여도 가려도 나로서 뭐고만 누가 매봐정 대화도 대마저 용이 체들에. 내가 아마도 세리보 용이 체도 말아 세리보 용이 체도 최체야도 요래데 나로서 다들 최체야도서 아무거나 세리보 용이 체도 말에 저 처보 변조야보 용이 체도 말에 가르쳐드려서 저도 아니 다시와 심마잖아 망고만아 소소로 누가 매봐도 대화도 된바지 용이 체도 최체가 요래 그와 최체가 요 이자대 소소소소 때 야보지 하고 그거래서.
So then generally in this type of situation, we're in a situation here where your community, you have this Dharma center and you have a geshe here as your teacher. So it's probably the case that you have some experience with the Dharma. And because you have that experience with the Dharma, that it is easier for Khensur Rinpoche to teach the Dharma, to speak the Dharma. And so when we come to this teaching and this practicing of the Dharma, we need to be very clear on why we are doing that. We are practicing the Dharma so that, at least at some point in the future, we will be able to achieve a meaningful, lasting, even perfect happiness and a complete freedom from suffering. And so we need to understand that when we gather together and we practice the Dharma, it is with this type of motivation. It is not for the purpose of longevity. It is not for the purpose of wealth and so forth, because as was stated, we know that this does not solve the problem of suffering. So we practice the Dharma with the hope that, if not in this lifetime, at least in a future lifetime, we will be able to achieve a state of complete happiness, great happiness, and total and complete separation from suffering.
Then Goshinetesene, Lanamaba, Sonja Pate, Lojama Mambo Chia, or Tusu Maruso, Never to go yard. I said, tell Machuna, and then don't you so number says in it, lots of nonsense in this one. Or tell the Indian and a Kovacha and on now, there's a Hakogu yard. There's a thing that telling Maruso, she had a Lomson Nosa.
So then today, all of us are gathered on this occasion, and the principal event of this occasion will be tomorrow and the day after tomorrow. And this will be the full empowerment of the glorious Vajrabhairava or Yamantaka. But of course, we need to have a teaching that establishes the preliminary for that initiation of glorious Vajrabhairava. And so when we speak about the Tantra and we speak about empowerment, before that, we need to study the common path. And when we speak of the common path, we are speaking of all of the paths, beginning with the way to rely upon the spiritual friend, the virtuous teacher, all the way up until how to actually actualize a Buddhahood. So there are many sort of paths that we are going to need to cultivate to go from that beginning point to that end point of the stages of the path. And all of these as a condensed form, they can come to these three principal aspects of the path. So renunciation, bodhicitta, and correct view. So the three principal aspects is the teaching that is going to be given today in sort of the mood of this being the preliminary for the events that will follow. And so Rinpoche invites, he understands that you have the custom at your Dharma center, which is very good, of reciting preliminary texts such as the Refuge, the Heart Sutra, and making the mandala offering and so forth. So he invites you to do that.
Praise to Shakyamuni Buddha, to the founder of the one going beyond the the completely perfected, fully awakened being, perfect in knowledge and good conduct, Sukha, no earthly world, supreme God of human beings to be trained, teacher of gods and human beings, to you, the completely and fully awakened one, the endowed, transcendent destroyer of the glorious wanderer. Homage to the Supreme Buddha, homage to the Dharma Refuge, homage to the greatest Father, to all three welcome, to all the biggest respect, bowing with bodies as many as all around do not commit any knowledge of the patterns. Perform the virtues of these actions, so that you upon the this is the beginning of the world. This collaboration, a flame of the light, and the power of the people above. As the beginning of life and things of life, see the research. Through these years, can be concentrated on our that and rather say that a great community of us and a great community of ourselves. And that's in the concentration of that all the grounds. All of that and that's not anybody. And also then through the power of the Buddha, the Venerable Shariputra said this to the Bodhisattva, Mahasattva, Arya Avalokiteshvara. How should any son of the lineage train who wishes to practice the activity of the profound perfection of wisdom? He said that, and the Bodhisattva, Mahasattva, Arya Avalokiteshvara said this to the Venerable Shariputra. Shariputra, any son of a lineage or daughter of a lineage who wishes to practice the activity of the profound perfection of wisdom should look upon it like this, correctly and repeatedly beholding those five aggregates also as empty of inherent nature. Form is empty, emptiness is form, emptiness is not other than form, form is also not other than emptiness. In the same way, feeling, discrimination, compositional factors, and consciousness are empty. Shariputra, likewise, all phenomena are emptiness, without characteristic, unproduced, unceased, stainless, not without stain, not deficient, not fulfilled. Shariputra, therefore, in emptiness, there is no form, no feeling, no discrimination, no compositional factors, no consciousness. No eye, no ears, no nose, no tongue, no body, no mind, no visual form, no sound, no odor, no taste, no object of touch, and no phenomena. Ready? There's no I elements. The next one. There is no I element, and so on up to and including no mind element and no mental consciousness element. There is no ignorance, no extinction of ignorance, and so on up to and including no aging and death, and no extinction of aging and death. Similarly, there's no suffering, origination, cessation, and path. There is no exalted wisdom, no attainment, and also no non-attainment. Shariputra, therefore, because there is no attainment, bodhisattvas rely on and dwell in the perfection of wisdom, the mind without obscuration and without fear. Having completely passed beyond error, they reach the endpoint of nirvana. All the Buddhas who dwell in the three times also manifestly completely awaken to unsurpassable, perfect, complete enlightenment in reliance on the perfection of wisdom. Therefore, the mantra of the perfection of wisdom, the mantra of great knowledge, the unsurpassed mantra, the mantra equal to the unequaled, the mantra that thoroughly pacifies all suffering, should be known as truth, since it is not false. The mantra of the perfection of wisdom is declared. Tayata om gate gate pada samgate bodhisoha. Shariputra, the Bodhisattva, Mahasattva, should train in the profound perfection of wisdom like that. Then the Bhagavan arose from that concentration and commanded the Bodhisattva, Mahasattva, Arya Avalokiteshvara, saying, well said, son of the lineage, it is like that, it is like that. One should practice the profound perfection of wisdom, just as you have indicated. Even the Tathagatas rejoice. The Bhagavan, having thus spoken, the Venerable Shariputra, the Bodhisattva, Mahasattva, Arya Avalokiteshvara, and those surrounding in their entirety, along with the world of gods, humans, asuras, and Gandharvas, were overjoyed and highly praised that spoken by the Bhagavan. Extensive dispelling of hindrances. I and all surrounding sentient beings go for refuge to the Buddha, go for refuge to the Dharma, go for refuge to the Sangha. We prostrate to the Great Mother, Prajna Paramita, surrounded by all the children and by the assemblies of the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas of the 10 directions. By depending on my prostrations to all of you, may these words of truth be actualized. In the past, the Deva King Indra dispelled the Maras by reflecting on the profound meaning of the wisdom gone beyond and reciting the profound words in daily recitation. In that same way, I also reflect on the profound meaning of the Great Mother Prajna Paramita and recite the profound words in daily recitation. May all diseases, spirit possessions, bad conditions, all the negative directions, that which happens due to past karma and immediate conditions, may all this be dispelled. May it become non-existent. May it be Mandala offering. Yawa kyabda dorje chen podang na wayo machi payon sen penpe nada dongi ledu sen namote jetsun losang tua dorje chen po Khensur Rinpoche Jetsun Lobsang Delek pe sang po shang nane te pen chen po suncho zamo le pazue yondu jang Jinkambu agizo Om benzo bumi ahum wanshin serji saji Om benzo reki ahum chi chari kuyu ge kure kusu Riga Pori Raksha Lupang Polo Zambule Lupang Nangcho Jang Rang Ramine Ludang Lupang Nayab Den Nayab Chen Roden Dang Choro Dramin and Dang Dramin and Gita Rinpoche Vivo Pasangishi Dojo Eva Mamo Kailoto Kolo Rinpoche, Nobo Rinpoche, Sumo Rinpoche, Lompo Rinpoche, Lampo Rinpoche, Tacho Rinpoche, Mapo Rinpoche, Teche Buim Boom Pa, Kema, Trewama, Luma, Kama, Mentoma, Dupoma, Nasema, Drichema, Nima, Dale. Rinpoche, Cholana Pagela Gelsen, Usula Dami, Peljo Kunsun Sapama Sangwa Me Pas, Shingi Duangwa Dida Drichen Sawa Dungupe, Chepe Pelden Lama Dampa Namta Pepa Duyang Yotenten, Nada Dogile. Bogile Dutsen Namo Te Jetsun Lama Losang Tua Dorje Chen Khensur Rinpoche Jetsun Lobsang Delek Pezang Pozan Nane Tenpa Chopo Sucho Zabmo Lepo Zungwe Yondu Zhang Kumwa Giyo Tuje Doe Dondu She Suso Jene Kada Sobro Wama Gurnam Keta Danam Pesen Chen tam che la tsu tse wa chen ko go ne jingi la tu so sa ji pu ki ju shi me to try li shi bi de again, Jetsun Lobsang Ki Chu Se Chu Zing Chi Sa Ju Je Ji Ma La Za Ge Cho Ki Cha Wa Chu So Yidam Guru Mandala Pandirgate Yami Chodam Soki Chonam Vajan Chubadu Dati Kapsuchi Dadi Chonen Gate Sonam Ki Joda Penshir Sange Pupa Chodam Soki Chonam Vajan Chubadu Dati Kapsuchi Dadi Chonen Gate Sonam Jova Shir Sambe Jova Suki Chona Jam Shu Bami
Okay.
Hello, everyone. Welcome. I would like to just express gratitude to Khensur Rinpoche for accepting our request despite his age and his busyness. We have requested for quite a few years. And kindly accepted to come, and we are very, very fortunate and grateful that Rinpoche came and blessed our center on the place Santa Fe, New Mexico, with his great visit and teachings empowerment during this weekend. And of course, we already sent, Rinpoche's biography, so I wouldn't go in all details. But Rinpoche joined monastery at a very young age, 7, and started studies. And before he finished his studies, unfortunate situation happened in Tibet in 1959, like many others, lamas with His Holiness. Rinpoche also escaped to India in Basa and continued to studies, completed his study, Laramba Geshes, and not only Laramba Geshes, like there are 7 years of exam, and among Laramba, all the big monasteries, top of the top. And then Rinpoche was one of the main teachers who studied who taught the monks in the monasteries, and I was one of those students who studies under Rinpoche. And if you think about Rinpoche and other teachers at that time, they teach 6, sometimes 7 days, most time 5 to 6 days, 6 days. 4 to 6 classes every day. And they are not being, they don't have any benefit. The monastery doesn't pay anything. Not even, it's all from this, and not for one day, years and years. So when you think of that, and then sometime, even when they are sick, not feeling so well, when the students show up to the class, they wouldn't say no, they will continue to teach, sometimes, and sometimes that they don't even have much break. Before one class finishes, another class has already come, and with such hardship, they are the one who built all this, rebuilt the monasteries, one of the main teachers of that. And of course, Rinpoche also was appointed by His Holiness as the ritual master in Yamantaka College and the abbot of Yamantaka College. And after that, again, His Holiness appointed Rinpoche as the abbot of the Serache monasteries. And after Rinpoche completed that, again, His Holiness appointed him abbot of the Seguba monasteries, and so, and Rinpoche not only taught hundreds and thousands of monks over the years, but also Rinpoche also traveled and taught also other places, through that Rinpoche has able to help and benefited great, And I think I mentioned, in last interview that we had, as I mentioned, one of the things that Rinpoche is extremely, of course, inner realizations, is something that we can express, say, but even in ordinarily, Rinpoche is such humble, and even with all his studies, practice, positions, Rinpoche has not changed as when he was ordinary monk. Still, very much like ordinary monks. And that clearly shows his inner realizations, So if you don't have realization, when you have high positions, all then you started to change, you become someone else, and those are clear and very loving, caring to his students and others. Always talk about kindness, compassion. And so I think I can go on, but I think we will not take the time from Rinpoche's teachings. Okay, thank you very much.
맞아, 놈이 타도 놈이 세제 당고 제제 더 잘라나면 와용도 봐도 어제 제 공부를 뭐제 뒤녀와니도 지내줘 또 버려서 이제도 대바침에 수제서 뭐세 놈이 공로 그제저를 말 이제 라마도 명화전에 내봐서도 대세 말을 차.
So Rinpoche just reciting a short verse explaining the motivation for as a Dharma teacher for teaching the Mahayana Buddha Dharma.
내가 관계를 생각을 산재 제도만 차섬 숨어도가 숨어요 숨바대 가르래서나 아 산재 제도 조제 총로라 창조 바다 단에 자주 제사의 장도를 장도 제거야 돼 가르래서 저는 알아서 그 안에 안당의 진여시 제야 돼 그리 수시 써야 동 취제야 돼 너바 산재를 취래 자물레를 취 너무다 몸보 제협에 너네 다른 알아서 써야 돼 너바 산재를 취래 Nama Sanjebe Chita, Nama Sanjebe Chita Rola, Sandro the Mana, Nama Sanjebe Chilin Rogamare. They Hakogare. The Chachamo Kandichi Chegayana, Sandro the Mana, Nama Sanjebe Chilin Rogamare. Later, Taring Aros of Sushi Shaya to Chita, Nama Sanjebe Chita, Nama Sanjebe Chita and Rovi Chita, and the Chandro Chegayore, they Hakogores.
So then generally when one is listening to a Dharma teaching, we begin with this verse that in Tibetan is called the Sangye Chutsukma, which is the refuge and bodhicitta verse. And the first lines in that prayer, I go for refuge to Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha until enlightenment and so forth. This is an expression of refuge, right? The second part is bodhicitta, but this first part is refuge. And the reason that we do this is because whenever we are receiving a Buddha Dharma teaching, it is important to establish that in the Buddha Dharma. So if we look, of course, in this vast world, there are many different dharmas, many different sort of religious traditions that are being taught. For a particular practice to become a practice of the Buddha's Dharma, a practice of the Buddha's teaching, then it is extremely important to go for refuge to Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. In fact, one could argue that even if one practices a session extremely well, but does not begin with establishing that mind of refuge, then that particular cultivation, actually, it will not become the practice of Buddha Dharma, right? It will become something else.
나게 저소 제베 소노 제 돌아 배체 상제 돌아 소사의 sem체 너제 말아서 sem체다 sem체사의 sem 자체 보셔야 돼 난다 받은 알아서 소소 지보고 된다 아도 파셔 소노 또야 말에 다 파말아서 봐 년년에 가셔야 된다 소노 또 저러마도 마게 세제 통제 된다 소노 산이 또야 말에 뭐야 말에 또 매봐서 다음에 저때 마게 세제 통제 된다 소노 또 그거야 마게 sem체 통제 된다 Rake Zube Sonje Kombo Toba Cha, Asia Tabachim Suji Samo Sesane, or some shit. Market Seja Tonje Tendane, Lana Bayonda Zube Sonje Kombo Toba Cha, one of Belam Lotel, some shesha. Some shit where the Kara Registration, Nangaroso, the children, Nova Sonje Chimba Mase, Nova Sonje Chilo, the Taba maybe Chil, the Tabachim Chinio. The turn on the Tabachim Chil, a Dutch there. Pay checho there. Tabachim Chusam, Shoto Chin Rada Yabala, pay checho there. Data, ne, Tabachim Chus and Rola, Semse, Mana, Tabachim Chil and Rogamade. Kada, Semse Sangate, Tabachim launch in Jugosade. Kozakoro Tabachim Sato, Semse the Mana, Tabachim Rogamade. Chutayan, Semse to Samba Mana, Tabachim Chil Rogamade. Data Tadang Aroso, which the Tabachimi Chu Sunza, and it is Sunja Chego, what is it? Numbers of Union Chego,
So then generally we spoke about this practice of the Sangye Chutsukma, the refuge and bodhicitta prayer. And of course, the second two lines of that prayer, I will achieve enlightenment for the sake of all sentient beings and so forth. This is what is the arising of the bodhicitta. So in Tibetan, this word is semkye, right? So this word means mind generation. So when we speak of mind generation, generating what kind of mind? Generating a vast mind. And why do we speak about generating a vast mind? Because until now, our mind has been very limited. When we consider the benefits, we consider only ourselves or perhaps a few close people to us, our mother, our father, our friends, and other people we like. But up until now, we've been very limited. We haven't really actually thought about all sentient beings. So we try to establish now this vast mind, thinking that for the purpose, actually, of achieving complete and perfect enlightenment for their sake, this is the reason that I am going to practice the Mahayana Dharma. And once again, Rinpoche, going back to that verse, bringing forth his motivation for giving the teaching, it is for the sake of all mother sentient beings that this profound Mahayana Dharma is being spoken. And so, of course, when we speak about the Dharma teachings, we can speak of them in sort of two streams, the Mahayana, or great vehicle, and the Hinayana, or Shravakayana, the limited vehicle. And when we kind of consider these two, of the Mahayana and the Hinayana, we can see that the Mahayana is a sort of vaster vision. It is something that is able to bring greater benefit and able to bring benefit to more sentient beings. But of course, we understand, just like without the refuge, right, a particular practice doesn't become Buddha Dharma. Without this mind generation, then that practice, that occasion will not become a practice of the Mahayana Dharma. And so for this reason, it is very important to, at the beginning of the session, do this mind generation, because this mind generation is actually a door. That is the entryway to the path of Mahayana Dharma, to the path of the great vehicle. So just to sort of close, that's why these two practices of going for refuge to Buddha Dharma and Sangha and generating this mind generation of the Mahayana, these are important in order that this becomes a Buddha Dharma, but also a practice of Mahayana Buddha Dharma.
Chuche Gibe Junse, the Yabo Chaco Gugor. Chuche Gibe Junse, Lama Chebotomas of Chuche got a lot, Suso and the Chuche Yak Mare, Chuche Gibe Junse, the Soso Hakogor. Soso Chuche Gibe Junse, Rolitzo Gavina, Namamabotone, out of the Chuche Gibe Junse, Tararejan, never Kava Tundi, the Hakogor. Chuche Gibe Junse, Hamagona, Chute the number upon Rogomare. Chuche Gibe Junse, Soso Hakogor. So, I don't cheat the shape of the Jensen, the one at Thompson, so tell the Leja God. She shake the Jensen, the categorization, then I also Tanta Terra. Send the Chipo in the Chiche Gaya Yomare. Send the Chipo in the Chiche Gaya Jose Yomar, not the Chepashe, I'll come and let him the less Araba. Gache Yachimbo the less Arab. Send the Chipo in the Chiche Gaya Jose Yomare. I should go on at the younger man, I should tell a man, Suno to say, oh, Maraba. I check the agents, I read it, so send the Chibo Maiba. Says so much you go with it, show us so much you are there. There are so much you are, the Sarah so much you are, Chisha go. Send the Chibo in the Chiche Gaya Mares, and you should have. Send the Chibo in the Chiche Gaya Mare, won't you at all? Suji Jangacho to Tena, let's have it. The boy Yona tell Yoya, the boy Yoma tell Yoya Mato, Jada Sono to Yamore. I told the teacher to be Jazette, Joa Shamachi Yoba is a tiller. From one of the numbers and it Joa Shamake Levio as a tiller. Joa Shamake Malan, the teacher by Yomare.
So then generally, when we are practicing the Mahayana Dharma, right, we need to have a good reason for practicing this Dharma, right? And also having said this, like, I'm practicing because this Lama or that Lama kind of instructed me thus, and that's why I am practicing in this way, right? That is actually not a really good reason. One needs to really be able to understand the reason why one is practicing to the point that if someone were to ask you, why do you practice the Dharma, that you would be able to answer that question. And if you don't know the reason that you are practicing, if you're not able to give a reason for the practice, then it would be hard to say that that practice, that cultivation is a pure Buddha Dharma. And so then we ask this question, like, why do we practice the Dharma? Then one begins to think, well, I'm not just practicing it for some type of a benefit in this life. Rinpoche reflects that, like, he himself is older. So if you were to ask him why he practices the Dharma, it wouldn't make much sense for Rinpoche's answer to be for the benefit of this life, right? So we don't just practice Dharma for the sake of securing the benefits of this lifetime alone. We also practice it for future lifetimes. And Rinpoche also mentions with respect, most of you here are perhaps 50, 60, 70, a little more. So similarly for you, yeah, it would not make sense to say, why are you practicing the Dharma, and for you to say the benefits of this life, right? All of us are kind of beyond the stage where we can say that. And so why do we practice Dharma, right? We practice this at minimum for securing the benefits of those future lifetimes. So really, that's why Rinpoche practices. That's why all of us are practicing. And also, it's very important to understand that if we say we're a Buddhist, if we're a follower of the Buddhist teachings, right, we do have that conviction, right, that this life is not the end of the story, that there are future lifetimes that are yet to unfold, and that it is for this purpose that we practice the Dharma.
Longa Sambati Yamare, Yomina Yando, Yomina Mando. Then I also can go Yandoya, the Dego, the Matamandoya, the Dego Suchi Dego Maraba, Manala, Mando, Deki Suchi Yamare. Yumano Mando, no Deki Suchi Yamare. No Deki Suchi Yamare, the Roshu Mando Dua. Ranshu Mando Yore. This one, the Tangar to Chicha, the Kadu, Mandoya, the Gote Kaka. Mando Sam, no some English, the Gote Kaka. Go Kaya, the Chicha, the Kaka, Mato, Pesha, Kaya, Yamare, or Lohu, Kene Kaya, Yamare, Malad, the Kaya, which is in the Kaya, Yamare. So, the Chicha and the Paka. So, longer to the Kaka, Mato, Malachi, the Yamare. I was a Ganga Choro, so you're there, now you're there. Maro, Mando, longer than I don't call up a Tagot. Choro, Mando, longer the Choro, so the Kaka. The Kaka, the Tekaya, the Chitam of the Yamare. Chikoran Kaka Mato, and a special choir on the Jana to the car, and also Chene, Kazer Agumare. Araba. And then, well, I know who to make a car in a local sabotage of car, with the mother Maruso Yochi to the court of Maraba. Part of Mare. But that another Kaya teller, Palo Hoga, Kaya Yamare, Pesha, Kaya Yamare, Kuchi in the Kaya Yamare. Karika Garcena, or Chish in the Kaka, what Maruso Moshi.
So then, in addition to that, if we speak about these next lives that were mentioned, when we talk about those next lives, there's a good place to go, positive future destinies, and there's a negative place to go, negative future destinies. So other than those two, there's no actual third option. So it means that either we're going to go up or we're going to go down. And of course, out of these, the preferable option is to go up to the more pleasant realms. There's nobody here who's going to say, like, yes, I want to end up in hell realm, or I want to go to the place where I'm going to suffer the maximum amount, right? Yet we see that although people don't have the wish to experience that, naturally they do fall down. So what do we need to do then? We need to kind of close that door. We need to stop that door or that entryway to the lower realms. How do we do that? How do we accomplish that? Through the practice of Dharma. We can't do that with money. We can't do that however much power we have. We can't do that depending on our friends or people that we know. It is only our practice of the Dharma and our own deeds that can close this door to the lower realms. It is only through the practice of Dharma that we can accomplish this. You know, we're not going to be able to shout out, help, help. We're not going to be able to pay somebody to solve this problem for us. And if even those kind of brave and powerful people, they have to kind of face this reality when they come to the end, then certainly for humble ones such as ourselves, we will also have to face that reality.
근데 야노사절 야노사가 롱가데 체거고요. 야노사가 롱가데 체거고요. 대응 주셔네. 소소 주셔네. 야노가고요라마도 매치가 주셔네. 소소 야노야 야말. 소소 주셔네. 소소 야노. 이게 매치 하고고요. 말로서 샤바데나 소바테네 소고요레데 내가 제세를 배그라마도 말로서 야노야나 말로서 롱이 깔레잖아요. 야노가고요라마도 성제자 청벌에서 소제가 야치 놓아야 요 말에 성제가 야치 놓아야 요 말에 말로서 취재네야 노고요 돼. 봐. 너도 야를 동네 야 노고요 돼. 그런데 대마로도 취재 대바침이 취재. 또 실화냐 뭐 가와 성원에 대바침 거래. 실화냐 뭐 수사가 진료세요. 너 대바침이 진료래. 대바 멤버를 실화냐 뭐도 요 말에. 예 하고 그거 돼. 나다 마라마도 더설로 실화냐 뭐 뜬거 말해. 그 대바 멤버 취재. 실화냐 뭐 실화냐 뭐 대사 들어가 대바침 뭐래. 일단 나로서 다 대바침 뭐 이미 그러와. 실화냐 뭐 뜬거 와도 실화냐 뭐 뜬거 와도 나로서 대바침 뭐 이미 그래. 아 대이나 실화냐 뭐 뜬거 능하시고 뭐도 야지 동네. 그 가서 실화냐 먼저 대전에 야부 자원이네 요. 취셔야 돼. 세면은 저와도 야로 봐. 세대 야래 또 가. 나로서 실화냐 뭐 뜬거 봐. 야야다 가대 빠랑 가대 빠라성 가대 어디서 가대 야래 동네. 가로 먼저 돼야 마도 가와 노냐 그래. 롱자에 돼 이거 말해. 너 거러는 야야다 가대 빠랑 가대 빠라성 가대 어디서 생기가. 그러고 저 대다 저거는 송시 바로 청구 송시. 근데 나는 뭐 여자 봐 저에 성질을 송시 있을 때 거군요가. 송시 해야 돼. 그다음에 저거는 손으로 넣죠. 돌로 넣죠. 통로 넣죠. 공로 넣죠. 면로 넣죠. 야래 동시 오시고 와요. 그 말에서 요즘에 하고 그거요. 너도 야지 너가 맨날 줘요 말해. 그 가서 세나요. 야지 채는 너가 맨날 야보요 말해. 그봐. 야지 먼저 와 마세 되네 봐 가자도 타들라서 녀무가 뭐도 너가 되나? 가시 그 채널에 녀무가 뭐도 너가 ngajato thado la soba thane mando lungudu nalang juto yo ngema juto yo tangne saja de lagme ramatu yo pati ko thane yabo muduga juto yo de lama ngai juto dei gui dei sene yo de korosolo ya de guduga ya jule ya de guduga ma 대만이 너네 전에 사원년에 너네 가서 너나 걸어서 맞아 차도 제가 전에 용치를 말해. 제가 전 주초가 용치를 말해.
So then we want to go on this path that brings us up further and further, right? And so we need to understand how to practice that path. We need to understand how to practice that path that is going to lift us up. Others cannot lift us up. Even the Buddha, he said himself, he is not able to lift us up higher and higher. This is something that has to happen depending on our own effort. On our own effort with what? On our own effort with the engagement with this Mahayana Dharma. And so speaking of the Mahayana Dharma, at the beginning of the teaching, the Heart Sutra was recited. So one of the things that we can know is like the Kung, which is the source of, or perhaps the sign that this community is a Mahayana community, is the fact that the sutra, the Heart Sutra, was recited. So where the Heart Sutra is recited, we know that this is a place of the Mahayana Dharma, because within the Hinayana traditions, for example, in the Theravada communities and so forth, they don't recite this Heart Sutra, right? It is not part of their tradition. So this kind of marks this community as a Mahayana community. But having said that, right, if on the basis of reciting the Heart sutra. We don't sort of improve and improve. If we are always sort of staying the same, then to say that there was some sort of benefit or something, right, it would be difficult to say that. So in this Heart Sutra, there's this mantra, Tayata gate gate paragate parasamgate bodhi soha. So this is about what Rinpoche mentioned about going higher and higher. And in fact, it means go beyond, go greatly beyond, and so forth. Go beyond, all into the point that one achieves Anuttara Samyak Sambodhi, complete and perfect enlightenment. So this means, of course, that we go through these 5 paths of accumulation, preparation, seeing, meditation, and no more learning, all the way up until we achieve enlightenment, right? So we need to know that, right? How do I actualize this for myself? So this is something very important. And then in addition, we could mention, right, that we need to make sure that as we engage with the Dharma, as we practice with the Dharma, that we are improving and improving. And if that's not the case, then we really need to think, because, you know, sometimes we see that there are people who are maybe practicing the Dharma, but it seems that they become perhaps more jealous, perhaps more proud, perhaps more difficult. In fact, they have more and more afflictions. And Rinpoche just was reflecting on this, and he says he's not going to share the name of the Dharma center that he visited, but there was a Dharma center that he used to visit, and he would meet different people, and they would be like, well, I'm the Lama, or I'm the secretary, or I'm the director, and kind of always talking about these positions. And after a couple of visits, Rinpoche saw that actually they're not improving and improving. He just saw sort of more pride and more jealousy. So at the end of the day, he just said, you know, I'm not going to go there anymore. And he declined the invitations to teach at that center.
And then to do the Naro, the Nado, Tamani God. As you go to Naro, get to check, call a Kejuchi at all. Koto ke jami jakere, jami ke shingi mungo yore. Koni de pa, oya che de tata che tare. Tata che tare jama koni ga kaji che chene ge kuche. Chene rogo me, yapo tsawa nyene mudus, tsawa nyene rogo me segdu.
So
Ane koto tolo, pato tare, jena tene chene yung jigo yo mares. Tene chene yung sa mares. Ane koni rogo me se, tene koto tolo dabai. 그래서 주가제 시나요 나자도 다도 잘 체를 로고도 가서 저 아마래 저 저로서 주 많이 하네 야그랬어 나 다네 주대 용금했을라 그래서 타완이네 용금해 그때야 돼 선바한테 때도 야래 또 야래 막 두루 든더더니 그때마 저 요마로 봐 대통령이 걸어서 라바에 다 걸어서 소소도 거저 혼자로서 나를 접어시네. 아 저도 나를 초체 대식사. 계시제가 서대대처럼 최초약 저도 초체 대식사. 저도 초체 맞대는 나로서 저도 지도를 했어. 저도 초체 맞대는 나로서 대대처 보고 말해. 저도 초체 대식사. 근데 저로서 셔토는 서용의 가수이 마도 날 전에 너도 전에 서용의 가수이 저로서 안다더니 전에 용의 가버려다스. 근데 돈에 달에 가버렸어. 이거 용매요는 가서이 당하고서 그 용매야 돼. 그치스. 근데 거기서 거기서 날 금바대야. 어때네 대당아 대체가 되네. 저로서 세가 나로서 취해야 될. semate te ya ro go go ro ba pi nyen ya te tam ni chwa no ji semba lo ba semba to so cho ja de chue de ma to sa ya nyen ne ya ma da semba cho ja ya te no to ka te la ma so su ne de semba de cha le tha ba de a le ba tha ba de cha yin na me ta we cho ne bo de to ka de pa so chu de ta le so ta te yin du ba semate le ni sa ya nyen ne te ya ma chue de ko de ya bo si ma nyen na 연애 야로서 맞아는 설 저와타는 더 토고요 말이야. 제가 나로서 가게 나도 내내 연아 세븐 저와 다 갈라가지 또 요소서 되거든. 내마도 만다와 문에이다. 내가 세번 저와 동가를 나가요데 뭘 세번 저와 동가를 나 소소 세번 저와 체는 마토는 야보면 누가. 야보 저와 때때 로고요 방가를 하고 근데 제가 노좀 넘어서 연아 숨때는 저와도 공터서 제도 아래서
So then Rinpoche is just further reflecting that he visited that particular Dharma center himself perhaps 2 times. and then he didn't want to visit anymore. So they asked him to perhaps think about sending someone. So he had a student who understood Chinese quite well, and so he thought, perhaps I'll send that student and helper to go to that center and to preach the Dharma. But after a little bit of a time went by, the students also said to Rinpoche, please, we don't want to go there anymore, right? We're not interested in going to that place anymore. And they were mentioning that the people at the center were becoming more jealous and more difficult, to the point that other people don't even want to come. And so, Rinpoche, at one point when he was speaking to the people in charge, he said, Dharma is for transformation. But, if the mind is only sort of getting worse and worse and worse, then it's actually better not to listen to the Dharma. It's better not to practice the Dharma. Right. And then the director during this conversation became quite upset with Rinpoche. And he said, well, we started, this center is supposed to be your center. So if you're not going to teach here, and if you're not going to send people to teach here, then you need to give your permission. You need to go give your permission that we can kind of look for a teacher, find a teacher ourselves, and invite them here. And, Rinpoche's response to that was like, yes, absolutely, you have my permission. And if you're able to find somebody, I'm most pleased. But honestly, it's going to be pretty tough to find somebody who's going to want to stay there. And they sort of apologized, but just reflecting that Dharma is about the mind. And as people who practice the Dharma, then our mind must improve. And we also understand that it is only the Dharma that can actually transform our minds. The great Kadampa Geshes of the past, they mentioned that they compared the human mind to being like metal, right? So if we don't practice the Dharma, if we don't listen well, right, then it's not going to be possible for change to come. So from our side, we want change to come. We want there to be some positive change. And we understand that that will not come about if we don't change the mind. And we do this through Dharma.
So
So Rinpoche very kindly just reminding me that if I need to stop him, I can actually, because he's going for quite long, and I am a human being, so it's possible I forgot something. I think I got most of the important parts, so I hope so. If not, maybe Geshe Sherab or someone will share those with you later. But anyway, I just Rinpoche says he's very enthusiastic, so but at the same time he has to wait because he's the one sitting here on the throne, but also I am here, and we have 2 hours to talk, and so that's just 1 hour for Rinpoche to share what he wants, because the other hour will be basically waiting for me to get done. But yes, he encourages me to sort of stop him if it's kind of the brain is full, and so I will definitely take him up on that. Treat him down because. Yeah, so Rinpoche just kindly again saying if I need to intervene and be like it's too much I can, so I appreciate it. And Rinpoche also just saying that he has this kind of habit of when he speaks the Dharma, right? He does this in quite a Rinpoche has a really nice voice in Tibetan. I think Tibetan people really appreciate it. It's like he speaks in this sort of like very loud voice, right? And then they were thinking, as Rinpoche, gets on in years and so forth, and he needs to speak so loud when he's kind of teaching the Dharma, so so that he doesn't have to raise his voice so much. We'll get him like a little microphone. And so initially, like Rinpoche was kind of like trying to sort of speak into the microphone, but then like the feeling for the Dharma and sort of speaking loudly, and so it became very loud, and the students were kind of like, hey, there's kind of a microphone here. So as he speaks the Dharma, he forgets about the presence of that microphone, and also the kind people who come to serve the tea and so forth. As Rinpoche is sharing the Dharma, he becomes immersed in that, and also sort of he forgets the tea. So that being said, it's not entirely surprising that he forgets Kedrup, the translator. So he encourages me to kind of remind him if that happens very kindly. So yeah.
데리데 저로서 야보제 얘기는 데리데 가서도 대체요. 너 돈이 오늘 들지지 미바제주는 만도야마도 제가 말해. 그봐. 단다들 대체조래. 왜 당에 저로서로 때 야보제 마다테네. 저로서 단다들 통단일을 자원이 있어요. 통매 자원 금호 야보지 그봐. 금호 가르고 단다 가서 봐봐. 금호 가르고 단다 가르서 로지서 넘바스모 되게 최대셔 그봐 최대셔 저와저도 맞아 소소소소 그 공시 주식 연례지 제소소가 그뭐 들으실 거 같아. 내 최대셔의 대체보 말에 최대셔네 내 연례 야보지 제가 있어서 그뭐 야보지 그거 알아. 그거에나 말어서 최대 야보지 용거 알아서.
So then, as we are kind of coming together here to listen to the teaching, of course, normally we could say that the reason for this teaching is as a preliminary for this initiation, right, or this empowerment that's coming up. But as we go through the ritual of the empowerment together, you'll see that there's not really much for Rinpoche to say except like visualize this, visualize that, and then he'll perform a ritual, and it kind of goes like that. So if you think in this way, actually today is the sort of the most important thing, right? This is actually the most important thing. And so he approaches it with that good mind. And then when we speak about the Dharma, right, often we talk about the activities that are important at the beginning, and we talk about the activities that are important in the end. And so when we talk about the activities that are important at the beginning, most of you will know that this is connected with the motivation. And so connected with this motivation, right, we have the essence of this text, which is the three principal aspects of the path. So as we listen to this teaching, right, we should have this kind of idea that it's not enough just to kind of merely know this teaching, right? We ourselves have to practice that, right? That's a very important awareness to have.
Nambi Juni Chen Lev Tegare. Ruba Mata, Chorosola Mata, two is a common Mevane. I'm no sugar meva. Never Choroso, no sugar meva. And then here, no Mexico Secretary, could you suppose he's a son of the so no, could you suppose he's a Kazuna, not on a pie, and make a shield, which I'm not a touch of the Kuchu Shivaji Saris. When they are longer, they will do my head. Naruba, Naruba, longer than Lulu. I guess you told that the Kuchu Shivaji Saris, no genius over Yala, a Kuchu Shivaji Saris source. Really, said the Remudu, Yabuduga. Yejoto Yabudu. I don't pay no jigger, Yejoto Yabudu. The meters of that, and that move to your mother, Yana Yangaman and Moshi so. Choroso Yana Yaman and Moshi is Sosana Yabuduga. Hey, that time, Maroga, one of the carriers, Choros and not to teach you, tell her. Proto Rabochi Shuna, Materi Choros or Chishin, Geshi, Lord of Lama Yagatino, Yungo, Jere, the Masa Tabachi, Temobo Yorba, Chisu Momo Yorba. You know, any Choros hotel, pay permission button.
So then, when we talk about whether one is listening to the Dharma or whether one is speaking to the Dharma, so when we speak about the speaker of the Dharma, right, the teacher must have a good motivation, right? It has to be a good motivation or a positive motivation. It cannot be a motivation that is afflicted. And in the Abhidharma Kosha, it mentions this, you know, that when one speaks the Dharma, one must not have an afflicted motivation connected with like attachment, pride, ignorance, and so forth. Because of course, if one engages in the activity with an afflicted motivation, right, then there will be a negative outcome from that, actually. So, you know, you can't think that I want to become famous or respected or well-known or something like that. You know, that would not be a good motivation to speak the Dharma, actually. And so Rinpoche can say, you know, from his side, he doesn't have this kind of motivation. And in terms of becoming famous, well, you know, Rinpoche is old. So, I mean, he's not going to focus on getting more and more famous at this point, you know, but he came just with this idea of like, if there's a little bit of good, if there's a little bit of a benefit that I can bring to these people, then it would be good to come. And of course, this motivation is connected with his conviction in cause and effect, right? As a practitioner, as a teacher of the Dharma, we must know about a cause and effect. Because nominally, you know, like most of you have not met Rinpoche before, so you don't know him. He hasn't met most of you before, so you know, he doesn't know you. But yet we have come together today. And so why have we come together today? We have come together today to study the Buddha Dharma. And as we do this, as we kind of create the space of this motivation, it is so important to recollect karma. And also in terms of a motivation coming to a different place to kind of meet new people or to like see a different place that he hasn't been before. You know, also Rinpoche is, you know, sort of not really so into that. And in fact, he had heard that this place called New Mexico was somewhere that was very remote. And he recalls being driven from the airport in the car, driving along the kind of the main highway, I guess, between Albuquerque and here. And he was commenting to, you know, Geshe Sherab that like, wow, this is like really remote. Like all the guesses, you kind of got sent to this kind of very remote place, you know. He was kind of joking a little bit about that. But of course, when the daylight came out, he actually got to see that actually it's actually a very nice place, you know. But just to say that, you know, he's enjoying himself, but just to say that was not his motivation. And as we said, you know, we don't know each other, but we should have this idea, this feeling that we are connected, that we do know each other, and with this kind of attitude, have this attitude of mutual benefit as our motivation for speaking and listening to the Dharma. And it's really just that idea of bringing you a little benefit that Rinpoche kind of accepted the invitation to come here and so forth, because nominally, of course, there's loads of Dharma available. And in particular here, you have a very fine Geshe who's teaching. So there wasn't any particular special reason that Rinpoche needed to come, but he thought, you know, if I can bring these people just a little bit of benefit, you know, maybe this will be something worth it.
이 계시가지 자가 대대에 뺀게 뭐요? 계시 용출에 알레베 용출에 뭐래래? 有些人真没过这多年，他们这个这牙症都的要的，牙症都的要的是对。我们这个路要在这那是要的是，牙症都的要的是用这个，我们这个是正常。啊，我到前头过来一阵要么的吧，你说你学给那个也要的是，那个国际家他要的是，给了出去查的呢。人家这个搞的这什么怎么的？这什么怎么的？这个公要的，人家说的这的。
이제 야부코마총.
아,
이 야부코마송 계시라.
아,
야부코마송 drew.
야부코마.
Sorry, I didn't understand the really so well.
야제도는 야래 주만 먼저 가서 내 나봐도 봐.
중범문두스 파츠 조.
이거를 농가의 요들을
알레 중범문두스 이에나 알레.
그래 누가
네네. sorry.
무슨 가서 야제도도 야제도도 무슨 가서 전부 가서 그 들이들 다 군달래야 봐. 나 대소니 쇼게테 초조도사 야보여 됐어. 아니 그 공시자사스 누가
알레.
제네 야티야. 이런 제네 곰때도 맞좀요.
알레. So Rinpoche just once again joking that he was driving with Geshe Sherab in the car, and he was just commenting as he was driving along the highway. You know, there's like nothing around here, right? And Geshe Sherab was like trying to be encouraging. Oh yeah, you'll see. Like there's going to start to be some little towns, I guess, and things that you see. And then he was saying, you know, like Sherab, you told me there's going to be a town or whatever, but I don't see anything. I don't see anything. And so, you know, as it was the dark night, he couldn't see anything. So Rinpoche was kind of reflecting like that. And then, you know, as the sun came out, he did see it was a very nice place. And then, you know, Geshe Sherab told him, we're going to take you to like a really nice place. We're going to take you up on the mountain and you'll see some snow there. But when he finally got up there wasn't really that much snow. To be honest. Also reflecting on. So maybe in the winter it's like a little bit better, right? But frankly speaking, at the moment, there's not so much snow.
근데 나들 너무 대박 내 누가는 너는 매도 야랬을라 저도가 내 누가는 매도 야랬어 아 근데 나 매도 쉬워서 나 마패도가 마패 차례는 매도 야 말고 건가 아니 건가 매도 저런 누가는 매도 야랬어 근데 매도 먼저 갔을라 야를 가지 정건도 야랬어 로 통목을 너 건가 매도 타쳐 주주세요 매도 내 매도 내 누가 써 너무 대박 리바 잡으시 다 매도 먼저 세요 말고 So
Geshe just telling, if I understood correctly, sorry, Rinpoche just telling a story between Joje, so Atisha, and his disciple Drum Tunpa. And so, you know, when they were kind of preparing and inviting, supplicating, I guess you could say, Atisha to come to Tibet, you know, Atisha was thinking, you know, this isn't like my land of India, you know, where there are so many beautiful and sort of nice things, you know, we can go there and I won't see like the beautiful flowers and all of these things like I had at home. And Drum Tunpa said to him, you know, actually, like where I'm from, you know, in my region, there are a lot of flowers. But finally, by the time Atisha came, right, it was kind of winter time. And so there weren't many flowers at all. And he was saying, well, I still don't see flowers here. And Drumtun was very insistent. He said, you know, there are some flowers here. And he took Atisha to a very kind of high mountainous place. And he pointed out to him some tiny flowers. And then it was like, okay, it's like not that impressive, much smaller than the ones, for example, in the vases there. But, you know, I guess in this way, you know, Drumtunpa wasn't misleading him. Like there were flowers there. They were very, very small like that. Yeah. Yeah, so you can see also Drumtunpa, he was like pretty sharp-minded, like pretty intelligent, right? From this.
호텔 원해지는 가로도 이샤체니 뭘 매거라 다들 내 맞다나 로지서 넘버 섬세니 무엇이니 때전에 다 성제지 사이에 받아 로지는 뭐 뭐도 조체는 서래 조섬 먼저 조 로저 남서샷 농사 농사자 대 가르를 되는 내주 정샘 양답에 따와서는 숨을 아까 살아봐 내중 정샘 양답에 따와 어떤 이제 때를 하고 놓치는 어떤 정말 갈래 다래 용 거래 방에 전에 하고 사마에서 야자는 각 하고 이 뒤전에 매야래 그러면 한번 거와도 어거는 거 딱은 거로 하고 내가 연애인데 저저잖아 맞잖아 한번 그런 거에 어거 딱인 거래 대이당 내 저로서 내주도 장세무도 양답에 따와서 될 저로서 라떼 통이 있어.
So then, generally, of course, it's good that you were laughing. So Rinpoche is happy about that. Like it's good to laugh and be happy when one practices the Dharma. And of course, as was mentioned, in terms of sort of the events over the next couple of days, they're mainly related to Vajrayana or secret mantra. But as was mentioned before, before we enter that sort of our main topic, as it were, of Vajrayana, we have to practice the common path, right? And the common path means a general understanding all the way from how to rely on the virtuous friend, on the spiritual teacher, all the way up until accomplishing complete and perfect enlightenment. And so there are many actual paths and practices that we need to kind of cultivate between point A and point B, if you will. And so if we condense all of those paths, if we condense all of the kind of main teachings that the Buddha gave into their very essence, right, we could say that their essence is contained in these three principal aspects of the path. And so these three principal aspects of path, I don't know how folks like to hear it. I like to say definite emergence. Do people like renunciation? Is that what you guys use? Okay, so I'll use that. So renunciation, bodhicitta, and the correct view of emptiness, right? These are the kind of three principal aspects of the path, right? And it's not just enough to say, okay, well, I looked at those, but I couldn't really understand. If you didn't understand, if you didn't sort of get it, then you need to look at it this. You need to read, study, and contemplate this. So in terms of this preliminary teaching, Rinpoche's hope is that he can give you like a little taste or a little glimpse of an understanding of these three principal aspects of the path: renunciation, bodhicitta, and correct view of emptiness.
같은 동봉 연주대. 그래서 스무드 간대지래자. 오늘 걸로 개체주 간대지래자 대 하고 그거래. 아무데는 연주래. 연주 생에대 호화를 매번 중앙하셔. 호화를 매번 중앙하셔. 호화를 된대 매봐. 호화를 바로 집안으로 대바텔은 호화를 매번 중앙하셔. 는 연주 생에대 사자라 매번 중앙하여. 나 저로서 되노라 용도. 왜 빼는 네 사자 대전에 전다실 바보던 게 요저래. 연하는 지대 용매요 요저래. 여기 가르쳐 빼나 전다 내내 마다는 바 보동에 되고 내가 매번 중앙. 내가 그래서 스매그 메시코 사자 매번 중앙. 내 벤데 전다실 노고요 봐. 그 하고 그거를 사자 가만히나 매번 중앙 생각에 빼지는 하고 저는 되더라고요. 그때는 내내 전화 로케이션에 콘 판도 가야 전세 가르래셔. 그 내내 매바데 전세 가르래셔. 그래서 하고 그래. 내내 매바 전세 가르래. 아치치리 깔레 가버래 니니래서 미치는 로고요 봐. 미치는 로고로 봐. 파셔다 로가절 전세지 로고로 봐. 그래 봐. 내가 사자 가반에 이나다. 그래 봐. 내가 바로 보내내려 가르고. 내용은 집보는 뭐도가 내용은 집 멕시코는 동계 맞아 미네소타 동계도 가사가는 동계도가 내용을 네번 주와대 가르 코로서 대대는 안 되려고 그거야 전체 가르래셔 그 대대도 뭐도가 사자들 대대 매봐도 봐 대대 매비 전체 가르래 대대 매봐 가르래 네 때문에 깔려 가고 영화도 판에 내고 영화 쳐봐. 요새 들어와 맞지? 요새 제는 뽑아야 쳐도 너무 봐. 네 때문에 매바데 저때 가로 요새 지금이다. 그래서 이나요 연락처는 너도 쉬는데 때문에 요새 가로를 빠고. 근데 때문에 요새 때는 된 주자래. 사자들이 매번 중요해.
So then, generally, as we come to this text, right, we talk about these three principal aspects of the path. So the first of these is renunciation. And so we should understand what renunciation is. We should also understand why it comes kind of first in this formulation, right? So that's something to think about. And when we speak about this word renunciation, right, in Tibetan it's ngepar jungwa. So ngepar jungwa literally means to emerge from something right? To emerge from something into something else. So we can say that it's a little bit perhaps like emerging, leaving one place and arriving in another place. And so if we never strive, right, to emerge outside of samsara, if we just stay within samsara, if we don't have that striving, we will not be able to emerge from samsara or cyclic existence. So to give a little bit of an example, there are perhaps many of you who are here living in New Mexico, right? But you didn't start out here, right? You came here from somewhere else. So you decided that you wanted to leave wherever you were and to come here to New Mexico. And similarly, you know, there's a lot of people who are leaving New York City, and they leave New York City and maybe they go to Minnesota or New Mexico or other places. But, you know, as part of that process, they have to think about the reason, like, why do I want to do that, right? Why do I want to definitely emerge from this place? And why do I want to go there? And they need to be very clear on the reasons, because as you know, with a big move, there's a lot of obstacles, a lot of things that need to be kind of planned and taken care of. And so you need to be very clear on the reason why. If you're not clear on the reason why, you'll never be able to strive towards moving to that other place. If you're not clear on what the benefits are of going to that new place, at the end of the day, you're not going to move, right? So to have that kind of movement, to have that definite emergence, it's important to think about these reasons. So we need to kind of check our view in regards to that.
나도 뭐 저로서 배티에 저로서 손을 또 쇼셔야 돼. 그럼 나도 단다데 연주셔야 돼. 고알랭게 반주마. 거의 바로 반로대 봐. 고한테를 된데 매대. 거의 바로 반로대 봐. 거의 바로는 너무 다 타발 맞은 거 사요 말해. 근데 타바 되니 절로대 용거 와래. 그봐 거의 바로는 로대 봐. 고알랭게 반주마 생각돼 되래. 거의 바로는 로대 봐도. 고한테를 된데 매바텔을 되니 연주셔야 돼. 연주도 거야 가는 연주 매나 타바 토야요 말해. 연주 매나 타바 토야요 말해. 연주도 거야 저세대. 연주도 매나 타바 토야요 말해. 이상 알아서 타바 되니를 봐. 타바도 도대체 마 토가를 봐. 그봐 마타집에 타바 토나요 알아서 대화 벗어서 봐요. 삼체 제가 생각 성제 성마제나요. 타바 토서나요 동안 매야. 야 다제요. 여당 연주면은 타바 토야요 말해. 연주로 선바 생각도 개체화돼. 그봐 오면은 알아서 타바 토가래. 오면은 나는 뭐 영도 성제적 고모 토가래. 되니 구리체로 말로나 내 병안에 타와 자원이네요 말해. 병안에 타와 자원이네요 말해. 제가 마타 부가들 타바 토가래. 연주로 선바면은 타바 토야요 말해. 여당 연주로 선바지 거야 되래. 연주로 선바돼 거야 돼. 연주로 선바면은 타바 토야요 말해. 오늘 연주로 선바 생각에 가르르세는 고알에 타대 절로 되래서 고알에 돈대 절로 되래서 어때 라체 사르다 연주로 선바 상 연주대 상성서의 상주주 세무세 나는 뭐 용도바 조배 소제적 공부 통대 절로 되라 상세자 상주주 셈 그저 막게 셈제 통 제제되다 나는 뭐 용도바 조배 소제적 공부 통대 절로 되라 아니 상주주 세무세 상주주 세도 그거야 돼. 내가 알아서 상제바 내가 있는 상주주 세면은 다음에 상주주 세면은 상제주 공부 토야요 말해. 상주주 세되면은 상제주 공부 토야요 말해. 내가 전에 상주주 세거야 되래. 그봐 상주주 아니 상주주 세면에 가르를 해주는 다들 데려와. 막게 세제 탐문 제제 되다 다게 조배 상제주 공부 토바 샤오는 별로 되는 상주주 세면세고. 가지고 그 거야 가르를 되면은 가르를 해주 되면은 상제야요 말했어.
Okay. It's like taking out the third page. I was worried I'm going to get lost. My apologies. I have to work within the limitations. So then we talked about, you know, this important idea that we need to have this definite emergence to go beyond, and to go beyond what, right? To go beyond samsara. Well, what is there beyond samsara, right? There is nothing beyond samsara but liberation. So we need to develop this mind that strives for liberation. This mind that strives towards liberation is what is going to lead to this definite emergence or renunciation. And in fact, if there is no renunciation, there is no liberation. So we have to develop that striving, right, to be outside of samsara. And similarly, if there is no renunciation and there is no liberation, right, then certainly there is no Buddhahood, right? So we need to develop that. This is very important because we also understand that in terms of that problem that Rinpoche talked about earlier, if we don't get out of samsara, if we don't produce this renunciation, this definite emergence, there will be no Buddhahood or liberation. And because of that, we will not be free from our suffering. So this is something really important to think about, right? That we want to be ones who are striving to liberation from samsara. So now the next point, right? The next principal aspect of the path, when we speak about bodhicitta, Jiangchu Sem, right? So it's sem, right? So it's a kind of mind, right? The mind of enlightenment. And so what is this bodhicitta or this mind of enlightenment like? It's thinking that in order to be able to achieve the welfare of all sentient beings, for their sake, I'm going to achieve a perfect and complete enlightenment. And similar as with the previous one, right, we understand that if there is no bodhicitta, right, there is no Buddhahood. And so without bodhicitta, we cannot enter the path that is going to lead to Buddhahood. And we cannot produce this bodhicitta without striving to enlightenment for the sake of all sentient beings. So that's the next piece.
그래서 동아 지나서도 소노 마토노 고알에 개반주 용주 셔야 영어. 거기 동아 지나서 거기 동아 지나서도 소노도가 가리서 내가 냐와라 셔나 동아 가려요. 예다라 셔나 동아 가려요. 동도라 셔나 동아 가려요. 물레 셔나 동아 가려요. 근데 살라 셔나 동아 가려요. 사마요라 셔나 동아 가려요. 저소레네 하고고요. 같은 정도 레레네 셔서도 야 말에 안에 드니 줘봐도 하고고요. 그러봐. 냐라노 셔는 그 차동도 등하다와 차례 차체 동네 두체 동체 그봐 야라 셔나 차동도 등하세 사냐도 너나 동냐가 등하 뭐 보여 그래서는 근데 예달에 셔나 어째고치 등하세 예달에 셔나 사야 마가 갖고네 때 무슨 바 등하여 사야 차네 말아봐 투차네 말아봐 갖고 뭐래 내가 투차네 말아 거바는 그 매마데 근데 나무는 제 더와 용거요. 여다도 소. 근데 동안 그 영화에서는 판단 파악 저거 줘야 판단 영화도 소도 텔레스는 가려서 하대. 그래서는 또 그거 알아봐. 나도 냐게 병아도 영화에서 다른 가로서 매야에서 전에 신호요 말에. 근데 저 소소를 내 손을 가려서 소소 라피를 쫓아보 뒤에서 사수는 가리도. 아니 나는 쫓아보는 쪼는 거 알았더니 동아 요사래 요사 말에. 다른 가로서 라파티를 쫓아보태서 사수는 쇼거가 누가. 대미치는 소모도 그거 말해. 네. 주시와도 대미소는 다다고 걸어주려 봐. 가로서 대시에 손을 가지고 사대서네. 그냥에 중간에 소소로 중간에 손을 또 그거 말해.
So then, as we speak about this mind of renunciation, right, to produce this wish for definite emergence, in order to really be able to bring that about, we need to think about the sufferings of samsara, right? And in terms of the sufferings of samsara, we need to think about the different types, because if we don't do that, once again, no definite emergence. So we need to think about the different sufferings of samsara, right? Not just the illnesses and so forth that we ourselves experience, but those of the different realms, right? Not only of the human realm, but also of the hungry ghosts, of the hell beings, of the animal beings, right? Of the devas, the god beings, of the asuras, the demigod beings. And we need to kind of think about that in a methodical way. So if we think about the suffering of the hell realms, for example, we can think that the suffering of the hell realms is mainly determined by a heat or cold, right? The suffering of very intense heat or cold. There's different kinds, but these are kind of the main ones. And then if we think about the suffering of the hungry ghosts, we can think about what it's like to have terrible thirst, to have terrible hunger, and not being able to have anything to drink or eat. And so when we think about these different types of sufferings, we don't want it to be kind of like removed and like, oh, we're sort of looking at those sufferings. You have to follow it through with this thought of like, what if it was me experiencing that? What would it be like for me? And so if we think about the sufferings of heat and cold, for example, you could maybe reflect on an experience if you spilled some boiling water on your hand, right? And if you spill some boiling water on yourself, what's the reaction? The reaction is you're going to freak out. You're going to be very uncomfortable. So you have to really have this idea of like, what if it was me in those realms, experiencing those particular types of suffering? Because if you don't have that, if it's like a removed thing, you're not going to develop that fear or that dread of samsara, right? Which is what we want to produce. That's important. So then just Rinpoche continuing with this reflection, right, about the different types of suffering. So we mentioned that the hell realms and so forth, and we can also think of the animals. And so there's different types of animal, one sort of class of animal that I'm not clear on the word for that, but these are animals that are living in the ocean and kind of suffering from the pressure beneath the ocean and so forth. And then there are those animals we can see very clearly, the ones that humans use, right, like oxen, cows, donkeys, and so forth to lift heavy burdens, to labor for us, or maybe even to eat, right? So that's a suffering that's not so far away, kind of easy to observe that. And then we can think about, us human beings, right? We know from our experience that we're not without suffering. We have these big ones of birth, aging, sickness, and death, and so forth. We also have striving for something that we want, putting all the work in and not being able to achieve it, right? We have this strategy of trying to avoid meeting the unwanted things, but yet kind of meeting them all the time, right? And then even when we talk about, kind of like sometimes like the highest realms of samsara, the devas, these godlike beings, they have a suffering that is more intense in the human realm as they reach the end of that lifespan, sort of increments of 5 or 10 years, kind of closer to falling, right? This creates a tremendous fear and tremendous suffering related to that. And then when we speak about the asuras, the demigods, they're constantly in battle and so forth with the godlike beings for position and wealth and so forth. So terrible suffering there. And then Rinpoche was sharing a reflection from, I believe it was His Holiness the Dalai Lama. So from His Holiness, and I hope I got this correctly. So His Holiness the Dalai Lama, sort of teaching, that within samsara, that there's suffering, that no one has kind of a true and lasting happiness. And then His Holiness was interacting with a person who said, well, you know what? I'm in samsara, and guess what? I'm happy. And His Holiness said, like, are you kind of really happy? Yes. totally happy. And then so His Holiness said, I've been to many different places in the world, traveled around, met many different beings in samsara, and finally I've met one who's happy within samsara. So that's kind of a good thing. So Lamrim Jawa Rinpoche is right. Korwa Nangola Kibo Yimpa Chik Tu Sons, right? The Jawa Rinpoche, right?
저를 콜마 레자로
Ale.
저런 거 지금 코알 동화 정도제 대화 자원이네 요 말해 15요 말해 나 15 누세야 라도가 아니 15 용의 지중화래 야보래서
So yeah, just checking. So it was His Holiness the Dalai Lama, and the Rinpoche just saying, like, His Holiness was giving, this usual teaching that the cyclic existence or samsara, it's like in the nature of suffering, and there's no lasting happiness. And this person was saying, well, I am happy. I'm not suffering. I'm happy. And so His Holiness just kind of, I guess, closing the conversation, saying, well, it's really nice. Finally, I've met one person, one being who's happy in samsara.
아 전주지 생활대 전주지 생활생활대 당일라 사지마 막게 sem제 통제제 되다 나는 뭐 요나바 주베 손제지 공부 토바 샤사야 되고 샤로는 별로들 전주지 생활세 그 용도야 가르려 주시는 당나로서 단단데 내주 손바테 야보죠 공부 공부를 고알이 토바데 타바데 용어요 고알이 타바데 용어를 소도 집어 고알이 타바데 용어라마다 나게 세제 통제 타바데 용어요 말해 제가 다 문제였어. 마게 세제 통제 타와서 맞추는 소소집어 다는 가까이 와 말이야. 마게 세제 통제 소소 가르쳐 버려. 마게 세제 생각에 할래도 가르쳐 버려. 그래서 샤왕 남아서 받으면 마셔봐 지에 매 생각요. 나 제대 매와 주세네. 받으면 마셔봐 지에요 말이지. 나는 나로서 되는 나로서 다 가르쳐는 손도 왜나 나로서 생각말라. mal sewa mungole ora mal sewa lele jada amare god wa amare god ta amare sene de shiji sen aru tache cheme chebe amare omme to tache cheme chebe ko ya amare ta chile lo jo me ba isonza ba shiji ta ne chebe ta shiji cheme ne amare dale amare mare ba tamne amare sa yene me amare ne yong mare ba yo singa mare anda amare chawang amane ma po chene 다다 바다 아마체네 용마데 무시래 왜 내가 다 마마 아마체네 요아봐 아마체네 요아봐 나한테 가면 제가를 좀 니로 제가를 마디 전화를 제야 말해 나 좀벌리 제나 나 가르세나 심지어 너네 제가를 안에 아마데 내가 다다 나로 존재를 찾아가게 있나 또 빼는 니노네 제가 있나 남의 아마데 봐봐 왜냐면 아마데 소절 아마 세례자다 나도 아마데 가르쳐요나 남의 아마데 야보 제요 봐 나도 아마데 야보 제 남의 아마데 야보 맞춰봐 용식 말어 봐 제발 제조로 봐 나도 아마데 나로 야보 제요 봐도 나로 다 거기래 나도 거도 로마스 컨트롤 하고 가정아 파라 너도 계달래나 때를 아메티 제키도와 아메티 제키도 아메티 제키야 되는 아메는 대세 자네 모차데 아마까지 쳐보이마 하고가 문제 바바까지 쳐보이마 하고가 문제 이게 되들라 아메티 셰송다 될 대세 자이 아마테까지 쳐보이마 대세 자이 바바까지 쳐보이마 대세 자이 된 코로솔로 야보 테보 총송아 대이다 다면 남의 아마테까지 쳐보이마 다들 아마테까지 쳐보이마 남의 아마테까지 쳐보러 와 대이다 다 가까지 쳐보이마 나가도 봐 네 강한테도 강가 다다 아마도 강가 가리쳐 모이만 나라를 봤어. 그거 그 전체 가르를 이제 나마 아마 세뉴 아래 저기 대용 거 알아. 어때 다다 되래.
So then Rinpoche just explaining the next one, which is this mind of bodhicitta, which, as we mentioned, was to be able to, for the sake of all sentient beings, freeing them from suffering, to be able to achieve the state of unsurpassed enlightenment for their sake. And then in terms of the reason for this, right, it relates a little bit back to what we previously cultivated with this mind of renunciation, right, which is that there's samsara and these various sufferings in samsara. And so we had a feeling for that. But then we think, it's not just me who has to deal with that problem, right? Other sentient beings, they're facing the very same conundrum with all of these different types of suffering. And so, like, I can't really disregard them, right? Because all of these beings have at one point or another been kind to me. And, maybe I can't remember it in this lifetime, but definitely in previous lifetimes, they have been kind to me. So we know that, for example, in the 7-point cause and effect instruction for arising bodhicitta, we know that as a human being, right, we come into the world with a father and a mother. And so we know that without a father and a mother, we can't come into the world. So we've had countless fathers and mothers. And there's no being that we could point to and say that this person has never been my father or my mother in a previous lifetime. And so if we think about that a little bit further, we can think that just as my mother is sort of kind to me now, then my previous mother was similarly kind. And we have this understanding that also, it's not maybe in very special cases, but it's not like in birth and birth up to birth, we have like the same mother over and over again, right? Most of us were going to have many different mothers. So even if we were to take this room, for example, we couldn't point to any being here and say that, this was not my mother in a previous lifetime. So that's also something to think about. And Rinpoche, before he came here, he was visiting the Dharma Center in North Carolina. And while he was visiting, they had this occasion of Mother's Day. And one thing that he's kind of found, in this part of the world is that people maybe aren't so convinced that their mother was kind. They maybe aren't so convinced that their father was kind. So Rinpoche, when he was there, he tried to share the reasons, right, that our parents are kind to us. And so as the occasion was Mother's Day, he wanted to share the reasons that people's fathers and mothers are kind to us. And he thinks that, that probably brought some benefit.
Kala sayade, lulu kayade, soso desaga kombade, tusu kanga ngarusu shekere meba, mara machete machi adoba, kakaye lulu kimeba, komba meba, lulu meba, saya meba, machi egde. Komba aja to sunche sane che yungu duga, ngarusu pesha teyo so songo yare saja to lebe shimba to lebe kadi chembore, mone to nere shimba to kale kaje jabe. 나로서 사야 여바도 심마티 까지로 봐. 심마티 로또 여바 맞추는 나로서 사야 매봐. 까지 쳐버려. 세제 통한테 까지 쳐버려. 그래. 내는 조여체 제가는 세제 도저 까지 쳐버려마다 라라매봐 용다봐 저를 손제저 컴퓨터용 세제라 때문에 더고요. 세제 매나 나로서 라라매봐 저 손제 컴퓨터예요 말에. 근데 그 가르침을 소노토가 근데 그래서 다 나눠서 세제 도제 가르침을 여마다 하마고 도체 도사이나다 예치시사이나다 세제를 시려고 그러와 사제를 시사라고 말어봐 사제를 시사라고 말어봐 어느 세제도 소로 오늘 도체 땅에 비례 오해 시에는 라마다 때에 로호 영에 로호 근에 라마다 그래 강아 도체 도사 강아 심제를 또 여러봐 때 말어서 논질을 해서 봐 세제도 저 야버체도 여러 가죠 So then
another thing to reflect on in terms of the kindness of mother sentient beings, kind of that Rinpoche exploring a different angle of that, is to think about how kind they are from the perspective of the food that we eat, from the clothing that we wear, from the house where we dwell. And that these things that we enjoy, we didn't work for those. We didn't sew the clothes that we're wearing. At least in most cases, we didn't build the house where we're living. And most of us, we didn't harvest the food that we're enjoying. So from that perspective, when you think about what we kind of benefit that we get from sentient beings, they are so very kind. Right? And that food that we have, that comes from the kindness of others. And we may say, well, I gave the money to purchase that food, but think for a moment about the labor involved in getting that food. Think how hard the people toil and work in order to be able to harvest that food for us. So yet another reason why these mother sentient beings are so kind to us. And also we mentioned about this motivation of bodhicitta, that it is for the sake of benefiting my kind mother sentient beings to achieve the state of unsurpassable, perfect, and complete enlightenment or Buddhahood. Well, without sentient beings, there is no Buddhahood. the practices that we need to cultivate to reach Buddhahood or to reach enlightenment, they depend on sentient beings. So if we also think about that, right, that without sentient beings, without cultivating those minds in relation to them, there is no Buddhahood, then this will also help us reflect upon the kindness of those sentient beings.
That's what that Sanju just said, man. Lana Mayota Bazube Sanju Komo Toya Manduga. I don't have the tower, the kitchen, I don't have the tower, man. Hawaii Toya Yamade, and Tonji Chamber Sanju Komo Toya Yamade. You got the kitchen. A Talo Toya the Niju somebody kitchen. Lana Mayota Sanju Komo Toba Sanju said the kitchen. You don't have the tower, and you got the kitchen. You got.
So then as we come to the next part, right, we spoke about there is no achievement of Buddhahood without this altruistic mind of enlightenment, without bodhicitta. Then we come to the third of these three principal aspects of the path, which is the perfect or correct view. And when we speak about the perfect or correct view of emptiness, of the nature of reality, we understand that without the correct view, there's neither liberation nor Buddhahood. So in fact, you need a perfect, you need to be correct view, both for liberation and for Buddhahood. You know, bodhicitta, important for achieving Buddhahood, renunciation, important for achieving liberation, correct view of emptiness, important for achieving both, right? So without saying, this is very important.
Ang enjoy Changse, Yang Tabi Tawa, Tosu Kanga Rojela Chevala, then Lama 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 the Menat, Lama Matena, the Rongela Chetogumare. You don't get you the Lama the Temade. There you thought that Rotono Hotel, yet a Lama no la chance laws and a Sula, Rovatanga Pesa Mera Mato, yet a Lama no la chance law, Sugayate, or Tosu Kanga Lola Karishuma, the Lama, then the younger water. I don't know, Tanga Sajapenda Tayo Suyore, Nohalman Yamas, Sabo Kanichi, Yonaya. Dulu to the member talk Marawa, member talk Mare, I also Dulu to the Yamal Congo or Yamal Kobe or the good make chief talk Mare. People do messages, you know, message conversation, never judge, lot of thoughts of it and a member in wood. Yetanga, Yami, Rats, I message member, member user. Those are Sanjay Shala, Lama member, Lama member, Yotaba, Sanjay to the Shala Chamber. I live in Shala Chamber, he probably. So then
Rinpoche speaking about in terms of these, so now we've covered all three principal aspects of the path. At least in brief, we spoke about the renunciation, the bodhicitta, and the correct view of emptiness. But now, and Geshe sort of isn't sure if you have the text, but to turn to the actual words of the text, it begins with the homage to the precious noble masters. So when we speak of a homage to the precious noble masters, this is a praise to the spiritual teacher, because of course, if one does not have a lama, if one does not have a spiritual teacher, right, then we won't be able to learn about renunciation, about bodhicitta, or about the correct view of emptiness. And so then there was an explanation that Rinpoche gave. I hope I understood correctly. So this comes from Sakya Pandita, and this is about the kindness of the rays of the sun. And so how these rays of the sun, if we like put out our clothes to dry, right, those rays of the sun will dry them, right? But if we were to actually put them near the sun directly or something like that, those clothes would burn, right? So it's almost like the brilliance of the sun is too intense to benefit us. Is that the idea? To magnify. Thank you. Yes, yes. So it magnifies for that. So in this way, right, it's, you know, we didn't meet the Buddha. So it's through the teacher, through the spiritual teacher, that we are able to have that magnification to receive the warmth and the benefit of those blessings.
Some of Tomani sing the Karate Rashi Jitabe Thomas, Rashi Jitabe Thomas, Rashi Jitabe Thomas sing the Karate, Rashi Jitabayina, to the chess such like Ramaleba Chigua. Ramaleba, that's also so that I in a Rashi Jitabe Thomas, you be just a Karate, Amanila in a Yongaduga. Amanila in a Yonga, Solo don't touch you, won't talk Madua. Amanila in a Yonga. You got in a Jeti Latin younger or Gelatin a younger or Rivat, but where how could do it? Me, Papa said it. Talak carried a meeting, me, Papa, corridor, Timothy, Yaman, Pro. Jetana, a Ranji Jetabe, Puma, Senator, Caruso. Other Sana, near the member. Now, Senator Kavan is a touch it. Goni Makuma, but the Kaleta should you chin it. Not in there. Go to Registration, go to Namarava. Go to Nayan Kola to Temerva. A Lapa to Nadabet Mare. Combat and Nadabet Mare. I'm only around on it. Dumat and Nadabet Mare. Lord and Nadabet Mare. But Nayina, Yava to Temerva. You get a Merva, didn't it? Lord Super and Nayana Kola, no Jamala Super, you get your Marava. So
then, as we come to the next part of it, we talked about the importance of this correct view of cultivating the correct view. And of course, when we speak about the correct view, we are talking about the correct view of a profound emptiness. And so we talked about, perhaps the main event of this weekend is going to be the initiation. But in fact, we couldn't really say that one receives the initiation if one does not have at least a preliminary understanding of this profound view of emptiness. So we could make this argument that without an understanding of emptiness, then not able to receive the initiation. And when we speak about this profound view of emptiness, then the question arises, well, empty of what? And so it's empty of inherent existence, or empty of natural existence. And so how can we sort of understand this? If something, we can look at it like the opposite way. If something were inherently existing, that would mean that it existed from its own side. It did not arise from causes and conditions, right? But we know this isn't true. Like if we look at ourselves, for example, we know that we didn't just arise in and of ourselves, right? We arise from those previous causes of our father and mother. And in this way, we can understand that we arose from those previous causes and conditions. And similarly, with any phenomena that we look at, we understand that it does not arise in and of itself newly and independently. It does not exist from its own side. It can only arise from those causes and conditions. And if we take the sort of another angle on this and take ourselves as actors, we can think, where is that findable or pinpointable I that exists from its own side? Because if it exists from its own side, it should be findable or pinpointable, right? And so is that I somewhere in my head? Is it in my hands? Is it in my legs? Or maybe it's somewhere in like my internal organs, like my intestines or something. But certainly if we point to any of those things, we can't point with them and say with certainty that this is the I, right? But at the same hand, right, it is on the basis of those intestines that there is an I that functions. So without the I, we wouldn't need those intestines. So this is the way we kind of try to find that lack of, I guess you could say, pointability or findability.
No, then it's in a change to the man over there. Now, sing at the man over there. Umana Mare, Lapana Mare, River Mare, not man over. I man over that never Marava Kala Saga de Leka Chevi Odaba. Chetama Meba, the Raji Meba Niga Chebat Hakum. At any to the change in the man to the Raji Meba. So to ten Meba the Mare, what you Chebat Hakum. May say as a Matulego, so should you change. So, Kedan Meba, the Nico man wrote the time Meba Meba Maravas. Kalasa Leka Chevi to us. Not Teta Karayinas. And it's a shitty chamber and a man over there. Meba decision and do us. No. So look more Kogar. Yeah, the may say the Raji Meba and Dugas. When they Meba the Maravas and Meba the Raji Meba Cheva Haku. 그 학교에서는 사모통반이라 고아차 이거라. 사모통반이라. 어tel 또 신호도 야 다제래서 그때서 학교가.
So then, listen. So then, if we talked about there this idea of inherent existence, right? And we talked about this in relation to the I. So then, having gone through this reasoning, we could think is, well, is it the fact that there's no I or there's no self there at all, right? And of course, this also doesn't make sense, right? Because there is an I, there is a self that eats, that goes to work, that has all of those experiences. So when we say that there is the emptiness of the I or the self, what does that mean? It means that it is empty of inherent existence. So the fact that something is empty of inherent existence does not mean that it is not there at all, right? So it's important to have some understanding about that difference. And this is something that we'll need to sort of think about again and again, the fact that something that is not naturally existent, it does not mean that it is not there at all. And if we can approach this and kind of think about this, then we'll start to get at least a preliminary understanding of profound emptiness, right? So we don't want to just think like it's too hard or I can understand, we want to try to have some sort of a preliminary understanding. That's very important.
하대 스무데 소소를 세워라 라마를 알아봐. 라마 개체쇼래. 라마 개체쇼. 라마 생각대로 가르쳐 주시는 딱하랑에 요아래. 네 로조 남다 땡에요래. 소소를 개체쇼래. 개체고 개주요래. 그봐. 오늘 세와서만 로제가 랑에가 라마도 다 개체쇼래 되래. 나는 뭐 영도바 조베 성제제 컴포너 로제가 랑에들 라마 개체쇼래. 라마도 저거 이다다 성제전데가 나마저바 상제네 토마치 수데라 유통벨라 와주네라 대주가 거래를 나마로 예마스다랑에 개개친 누가 이 메제네 저 가바도스네 마 부도네 마 까노누가 부도네 마 까노데 내가 가바도스네 키 아마콜이 따라와 저도 저러다가 논서 상제에 되겠어 하고는 누가 그러 개개의 가바도 하고는 누가 소재 많이 뱉다 대려서 끼라도가 근데 지금 저는 다 되어서 건물시대 저렇게 다 되어서 와 너한테 내려서 내 앞에서 너를 와자도가 너를 와자게 용시 처로 받아서가 우리 거는 차바를 타면다가 차바도가 되게 되는 차가 죽었어 어떻게 지켜야 좋아요 다저는 몇세자는 뼈 먹어 자야 당하면서 되세 용거 말해 그 자야 돼 가르를 지켜는 손제 조대가 한 먹어 와도 차바로데 말해 마음을 내자서 소소소소가 개개도 알라마저서 개천부터 집이 채도 아니 소제 조대데 그런 것에 개개도 개천부터 와래서 나로서 라자래서 나로서 개체조 증가래서.
So then we mentioned that these three of renunciation, bodhicitta, and correct view of emptiness are all very important, but we know that also our understanding of the bodhicitta, correct view, and renunciation, that these come from the lamas. And for that reason, we understand that because our understanding of these come from the lamas and come from studying with the lamas, that the lama or the teacher is very important. And, so important, in fact, that we understand that speaking about achieving this state of Bodhi, complete and perfect enlightenment for all beings, we absolutely need a lama. And we can, Rinpoche related a story about Buddha Shakyamuni here. So Buddha Shakyamuni, after he sort of attained enlightenment, he was called to like a teaching seat and he began to sort of preach the Dharma, but then he thought that, he needed to honor his previous teacher. So he thought of one of the previous teachers that had taught him poetry, who had taught him poetry. And he sort of mentioned the name of this teacher who taught him poetry. And then he thought, like, on this occasion, I should actually invite him here. Does anybody know where he is? And so there were some non-Buddhist followers, I guess, in the audience, and they're saying, see, look, the Buddha doesn't even know where his teacher is. So how can he speak about being enlightened if he has to ask people where his teacher is? Not only that, he wants us to find the teacher and invite him here, and then he was uttering the teacher's name. And like, oh my gosh, like he's so attached to his teacher. So how can he be a fully enlightened Buddha, if he has that kind of attachment? And Rinpoche mentioned that there's lots to explain here, but we're already near the end of our time, so we can't go into it here. But to make a long story short, it wasn't, of course, because of attachment, and it wasn't because of a lack of clairvoyance that Buddha Shakyamuni mentioned this teacher and sort of called him forward. It was important to demonstrate, to take this aspect to demonstrate to disciples the importance of relying on the teacher and how to properly respect the teacher. So that was the reason that he behaved that way at that time. So Rinpoche is asking about the time that tomorrow starts. So please arrive here at precisely at 10:30, right, for the empowerment ritual. And Rinpoche just mentioned that's sort of it in terms of the preliminary teaching, this introduction to the three principal aspects of the path. Very important preliminaries that get us ready for tomorrow's initiation. So I'm just confirming that will be at 10:30 tomorrow.
A short mandala offering. Sajipuki Jushi me Jetsun Idam Guru Ratna Mandalatam Niryatayam Kevadi Nuda Lam Drukya Chika na Sana Go Jancho Sancho Rinpoche Ma Ke Panam Ke Yuchi Kewanam Pame Payam Gone Gondu Pelwasho Gangri Rawe Korwe Jinkan Deer Pendan Dewa Malu Jamwene Chen raising wa tenzin yatso yi. Jape si te bardu tengyur chi. Hear this swift return prayers for Lama Zopa Rinpoche. Hear this teacher and assembly of the children of the victorious ones, Shvakas and Pradiyaka Buddhas, victorious Losang father and sons, along with the lineage masters, all the objects of refuge of infinite lands. Please bestow the virtue and goodness of accomplishing this prayer here and now, holding and spreading the Muni's precious and complete teachings. Through explanation and practice, you wore the armor of patience that is never discouraged. Incomparable, venerable Guru, to you I make request. While striving single-pointedly for the sake of the victorious one's teachings, the sole gateway through which all benefit and happiness are merged. And from other living beings, you suddenly departed to peace. What a great loss. Nevertheless, through the undeceiving truth of the blessings of the ocean of the three jewels, and the great waves of bodhicitta of the children of the victorious ones, may the smile of a reincarnation swiftly beam in glory for fortunate disciples. And for the long life prayer for Khensur Rinpoche Jetsun Lobsang Delek, the one who mastered his speech at a very young age, the one with great patience who received the name Awatare, the one with great precision who spread the teachings of Lama Tsongkhapa on bliss and void. Lama, ornament of the yellow hat tradition, please remain until samsara ends.